gentlemen, introducing the pound-for-pound best radio show around the world, it's Leave It in the Ring.
But the real fight fans, I'm talking about if you're tuning in and listening to Leave It in the Ring right now, you're a real fight fan, okay? Because this is what hardcore fight fans do. We all want to talk about boxing consistently. It's a 24-hour thing. It's not a sport to us. It's a lifestyle.
Kelly's dad and Jack Lowe as well. There's a lot going on in that camp as far as they believe that he really needs a different trainer, somebody that has more world-class experience, that Kelly's a better fighter than what's been going on, and that, Jack Lowe, as far as he's taken Kelly, doesn't have that world-class experience except with Kelly Pavlik. And that I tend to agree with it. He hasn't really gotten any better. They're added a strength coach and a conditioning guy, which, any trainer worth their salt should know how to feed their fighter, keep him trained, and what gets that guy at optimum, especially if you came up with him his whole career. You really should. And if you don't, then, I guess you do add some people, but to me, you should have the whole skill set.
Absolutely.
Come on. It's like, how many years of history do we have in this sport without a strength coach, without a conditioning coach? I'm all for new science, like the Victor Conte stuff that he's doing now, not the steroids period. That stuff, apparently works. The fighters all seem very happy with it, and I'm all for it. But at the same time, to me, the one thing that hasn't changed is a good trainer can game plan, can make adjustments mid-fight, is in tune with their fighter, and knows how to prepare them for every eventuality and gives them the tools to succeed. I'm not seeing that with Kelly Pavlik right now.
Right,
and
you're absolutely
I would agree
right. But sometimes even the best of trainers that do know how to make adjustments, it really depends on the fighter. If they're trained to look, I've told many times kids, because I've heard, practice makes perfect. Yeah, it does if you're doing it right. If you're doing it right.
Perfect practice makes perfect.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of times a particular fighter can get stuck in a mode, where even when you're trying to correct it, he just can't do it. And I want to move away from that topic because we got a lot of stuff. We got Amir Khan coming through. Got, Freddie Roach. We got another guest that's coming through right now, and it's a friend of Gabriel and stuff. So, Gabriel, why don't you go ahead and give the introduction of who we're calling in right now, and more or less tell everybody who he is. So, if the fight fans are not familiar with them, they're going to get familiar with him right now while I'm calling them in.
Right on. Our next guest is one of the writers in the States that is as familiar with the European boxing scene as anybody I've ever met. He understands all the players involved, from Universum to the Klitschko's, everybody. He's the guy that actually, next to Steve Kim, was the only guy I knew that picked Dmitry Pirog to win by knockout. His name is Julian Kasdan, and he writes sometimes for Doghouse Boxing, which is where we met, and he also sometimes writes for MaxBox. Let's just kick it right off. So you and I had talked a little bit, and we're a little pressed for time, so I want to kind of get right into it, Julian. You talked about the difference between the training camps in Europe versus the training camps in America. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, the Europeans really approach boxing as more of a business. And that's not to say the fighters themselves will fight with less heart in the ring. I mean, we've seen plenty of European fighters who have shown tremendous heart. But they look at boxing as a legitimate big-time sport. And as such, they will go out and they will promote themselves, will have full-time trainers. They will have multiple top former amateur fighters, top professional fighters in their stables, and they will have these guys sort of feed off each other in the gym, pick up little stylistic, genres here and there, pick up different things that work against different types of opponents. And on top of that, you can go to some really major promoters, someone like a Sauerland or Universum. You go to their gyms, and you'll see some pretty advanced machinery there. You'll see machines that measure their oxygen levels, things that really help you improve as a fighter, not only on the physical side, but when you can make someone a better athlete when it comes to strength and conditioning, then it becomes that much easier to make them into a better skill athlete.
Now, you had talked about the gyms, how state-of-the-art they are, and that they've pretty much embraced kind of.
Yeah, they're very large facilities. And these are gyms that are actually maintained by the promoters. Where in the United States, a lot of the promoters just let trainers have their gyms and they'll pick up fighters as they come along. The promoters in Europe, when they sign a fighter, very often they'll bring them into their gyms. And these gyms, they're very large facilities with different rooms that focus on different things. And you'll see advanced machinery there, things that measure oxygen levels, help you develop your physical strength. It's sort of like a Rocky IV type scenario, albeit without, as far as I know, without the steroids. But it's modern training techniques. You know, if you go to say a Division I football program, you'll see the exact same things. You'll see machines that help you with specific exercises. You know, you'll see machines that measure your PSI when it comes to your punches, and that lets you know, hey, you know, I'm punching correctly or I'm not punching correctly. How can I better get power out of what I'm doing? And once again, you could have a fighter that takes that a little too literally. Someone like a Marco Huck, who's a very physically talented fighter, but he relies a little too much on his physicality. Or you'll have a fighter that understands how that helps him out and then really implements the skill aspect of the sport of boxing and develops a style that's very dangerous in someone like a Dmitry Pirog or Vladimir Klitschko.
Like Pirog.
Yeah.
Now, there was a story that we were talking about that we wanted to have you on. Are you able to speak to that? Are you able to break that story now?
The issue with Universum. Yeah, Universum, which is one of the two major European promoters, the other being Sauerland, has lost its ZDF contract. For those who don't know, ZDF is to Germany what ABC, NBC, CBS are to America. And these large contracts, Sauerland has one with ARD, and K2 has one with RTL. These large contracts enable these major European promoters to sign these amateur stars, to keep trainers on full-time, to fund these major facilities and put on these big shows. Without this contract, it's hard to believe that Universum can continue to service its contracts with its fighters. And it's hard to believe that Universum can continue to operate the facilities it has. These are very expensive facilities. It's very expensive to have trainers on contract. I know that, for example, Teddy Atlas, who's not the main trainer for Sauerland event, but because he's working with Pavlik, gets something in the area of $20,000 a month. So this kind of stuff's expensive, and without an ability to pay your fighters their potential seven-figure paydays for big enough fights, maybe even eight-figure paydays in the case of, say, Vladimir Klitschko, it's going to be very, very hard for Universum to continue to exist in the way that it has. They may not go out of business entirely, but one has to think they will no longer be one of the big European promoters.
Okay, so let me ask you this really quick. How does a company like this repair themselves to keep functioning, at least for the time being, before going completely under?
Well, for the time being, they have to find some way to work with networks they have not historically worked with. Things like Eurosport, which is where they've traditionally put second-tier cards, and smaller promoters. People like Spool Steinfort have traditionally worked. They'll have to find ways to work with companies like Eurosport and try to get Eurosport, which is sort of the European version of ESPN, to pay more per fight than they normally would. They also have to go out there and find ways to work with non-German-based networks. You know, networks over in Russia, networks over in other parts of Eastern Europe, and in the United Kingdom. If they cannot do that, chances are they'll probably have to offload a lot of their talent and start from scratch, basically.
So
why has this been kept so quiet? Oh, go ahead, Dave.
No, go ahead, because I was going to ask the same thing. Go ahead.
Why hasn't this been a bigger story?
Well, I think the biggest reason it hasn't been a bigger story is probably for the same reason why the Klitschko's not on American television anymore. I think for a lot of people in the United States, what happens in Europe is not perceived as being important to the world of boxing in general, which I think we all realize is not true. Boxing is an international sport. These people are called world champions for a reason. So when a promoter of this magnitude finds itself in a position where it might go under, that's a very important story, and it really should be getting a little bit more coverage.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely, it's good that we were able to break it here, but we'll definitely have to write up this story.
Well, let me ask you this. If it goes under,
go ahead, Dave.
What kind of effect would that do for the, Euro scene? I mean, what does it do for the fans out there? I mean, does it limit them to a lesser ground of view of people to watch it, or does it make them, the other companies that are still functioning, does it make them want to up their, I mean, basically they can basically do what the American promoters are doing at the moment, doing everything on pay-per-view just to survive because they have that leverage now.
Well, if you look at the European scene, while Universum has been in a bit of a slide, they've lost a number of fighters, and they've recently lost their contract with EDF. Sauerland has been able to not only continue its contract with ARD, but also sign contracts with the main television network in Denmark, and is continuing to sort of solidify its position as the top German promoter. Now, they cannot capture the entire German market. It's simply too large of a market for any one promoter to control. But what this does is it opens up the opportunity for someone who is well-placed and who has significant capital to try and pick up some of the talent that Universum's undoubtedly going to lose, and some of the amateurs that will eventually go pro that normally would have gone to Universum, and sort of retake their position in the market.
Wow. So we could potentially see an influx of Euro fighters, say if Golden Boy or Top Rank decided to pick them up and go international.
We potentially could. I mean, it would not surprise me if K2, which is already a well-placed promoter in Europe, if they became aggressive and decided to sort of pick up some of this talent and put them on their cards and grow as a promoter, because they're already very well-placed. They already have a network contract with RTL. They have 2 marquee fighters, and the only thing they haven't really done is integrate more European fighters onto their cards. When you watch a K2 card, you'll often see guys like Jonathan Banks, and no offense to Jonathan, he's not an elite fighter. He's not a European fighter. He probably doesn't have much of a crossover over there. But they can go out there and they can pick up guys who are becoming independent, guys like Felix Sturm, and put him on their cards. And some of the guys that might eventually fall off. You never know what could happen to the Dennis Boydsovs, the Gennady Golovkins, these really good fighters who expect to get paid well and may not be able to get paid well simply because of the situation that they're now in with their promoter.
For those of you just tuning in, we're here with writer Julian Kasdan. He's breaking this story about Universum, essentially on the brink of folding. Thank you, Julian. I appreciate you coming. I wish we could keep you long. We've got another writer coming on right now. But look forward to having you back on, and let us know all the latest that's going on in the Euro scene.
Will do. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, Julian. Thank you, brother. You take care. We got our other correspondent from San Diego to Tijuana, Felipe Leon. What's up, brother? How you doing?
What's going on, guys?
Oh, man, just hanging out. You know what? It was nice and cool today. They just got hot in here in the office. I don't know if it was because if it was the breaking news or what, or it's because of the ladies walking by my window. It's one of those things. But what's going on with you, brother? How's everything going?
Hey, man, I got home from what I like to call the wild card of the South, which is the CREA gym down here in Tijuana, and I saw a great sparring session between, the newest signee of the Espinosa Boxing Club, which is Antonio Orozco, and he went 4 hard rounds with this undefeated fighter from here from Tijuana who's really, really good. He's actually been showcased for Gary Shaw back in February in Monterrey when DeMarco fought Valero, and Gary Shaw took a look at him. I don't know if he's going to sign him or not, but his name is Juan Pablo Cheche Lopez. Guy's 17-0 with 16 knockouts, and Orozco looked great against him. He did a little bit of an adjustment after the first